Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Harry Watt of North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. This continues the National Firewood Workshop 2021. Today here with Joe Ney at the Ohio Woodburner. He is a small firewood operation in Ohio, specializing in a wide assortment of firewood products. Can you tell us about your business, Joe?
Sure. We like to consider ourselves a value-added firewood supplier. We look at firewood as a commodity, and we go after a market that traditionally doesn't buy firewood, for 1,001 reasons. But what we specialize in, though, is consistent, clean firewood. It's all hardwoods. There's no mud, there's no mushrooms. Everything's consistent, 16-inch. We split our wood smaller, and we go after customers that don't traditionally buy firewood.
Well, give us a little bit of your background and what you've learned in the firewood business.
Sure. I am a 22-year plus corporate hack, right? And I used to travel for work. I would live in a hotel, and I noticed over the years I would try to start downsizing my career. I left my one job that had me on the road for another job where I could be home every night. But I kind of got into firewood, one as a hobby, and then it was a side hustle. But there was a time where my company wanted me to relocate, and I didn't want to. And I took a severance package, and I used that time to care for my dad, who was in declining health. I had this vision for a firewood company that you could make money as a sole proprietor in selling low volume but high margin firewood. And so far, so good. We shoot for an average of $500 a cord once we're all done. And we do that by delivering small quantities. We don't deliver cords. The most I'll deliver residential is a half cord. And, the quarter cord, sixth of a cord, where a lot of firewood companies will only want to deal with cords or multiple cords. We're the exact opposite. So we try to keep things small. I use smaller trucks. I use half-ton trucks. And, we will deliver that sixth of a cord or a quarter of a cord, but, we charge a good, a good price for it.
So when we're talking cords in firewood, we always use the words full cord, face cord. So when you say you're taking somebody a half a cord, is that half of a full cord or half of a face cord?
Yeah, that's half of a full cord. That is one of the big challenges. When I look at the firewood industry as a whole, there is so many freelancers out there with the way that we're selling firewood and the way that we define a quantity of firewood. So, in the state of Ohio, at least, we're required to follow their guidelines, which it has to be a cord or a fraction of a cord. So even though I know what a face cord is, or a rick, which is a common term out in this part of the country, we just call it, a fraction of. So it's a third or a quarter, a sixth, an eighth, whatever it is, it's measured out to be like that.
Okay, well, take us around your place and tell us how you run your business.
Yeah, well, we try to keep things small, but when I first got into firewood, I just thought I would just sell to residential, small quantities to like apartments or condominiums, where they can't have a big cord of wood stacked anywhere. So I would just take them like a small amount and just keep them, like on a subscription. But we immediately got into restaurants. The very first customer I got was a premier restaurant in our area, high volume, like one cord every 11 to 13 days they order. And I learned real quick, the way I was making it was with a chainsaw and a splitter. I learned quick that I can't physically keep up with this. I'm in my 50s now and I'm not young, okay? Even though I still look pretty good, the age is catching up to me. So I decided I would get me a firewood processor. And I started getting these logs delivered to me from the loggers. I've made friends with a couple of them. And, it was a small processor. And I learned right away that it wasn't the right one for me because I was looking for smaller splits, what the restaurant wanted. And once I made enough money with it, I went ahead and traded it in and picked up this Yappa 365. But we make our firewood with mill rejects or the tops, that come out of logging jobs. So I buy them off the triaxle. I don't do any tree service wood. I don't go out and wood scrounge anymore either. I don't go out to the field and look for wood, even though it's free. It's not when you are at the when you're at the volume that I'm at, which is between 150 to 200 cords a year. You just can't make things work. It's better to buy your wood from these poles and just start banging out cords. Everything that we make is stacked. We don't leave anything in a pile. We take that extra time to stack it in straight rows off of the ground. And that is just the best way that we have found for value-added firewood. That keeps them out of the mud. There are no insects. It dries out great. No mushrooms grow on it. And that allows us to charge a maximum price for our wood. We are dealing with growing pains right now. I'd have never thought that this would have happened, but we just keep growing. And we have a drainage problem here. I live on acreage, but where I wanted to work, we can't get out there half the time because, man, when it rains, you're up to your shins in water. So I have a plan. We're moving all of our production to back here, what we call the back 40. And that's going to take, though, some excavating, some preparing of the ground, adding some gravel and a good working base. And then we're moving all these machines back there.
Well, walk over to your processor and tell us how you operate it and how you get the quality of wood that you get.
Yeah. So this is, let me turn my camera around, Harry.
Thank you.
This is a Yappa 365 Pro. It is made in Finland. And it is these European style machines are different than the American ones. They're not built with, heavy angle iron and beefy welds and those big chain infeeds. It's kind of like, I would compare it to a 72 Chevelle to like a Ferrari. They're both great machines. They're both fast, but they just are different. And this machine is different, but man, is it fast. They come with a 2, 4, 6, and 8-way knife. And that was, the thing. I would never buy a processor now without an adjustable knife. The other thing that I wanted for consistent sizes is this positive stop. My other one would have that dangling chain where you just eyeball it. And then sometimes it's an inch longer, sometimes it's an inch shorter. Every log is 16-inch with this. It is a 15-inch bar and chain. It's just standard chain and bar. If you were to hit it with a log or something, if you had to replace it, that's at the saw shop. For the speed too, the hold down is just this spring-loaded clamp, and it's on like an angled base, so it's pushing the log up against, while also the force of the chain sucks that log up against, and while you're cutting it. And it's a 2-stage ram. It's got, I think Yappa calls it a speeder valve, where it comes out fast, but once it starts feeling resistance, it'll kick into a lower gear. We have a belt in feed, and this is working off the Yappa 471 timber deck. And it's got the 2 chains. What I like, it's got this separator wheel, so you're not accidentally feeding 2 logs into the trough. And so it's powered by a Honda 690 gas engine. And that's where, these European machines, most of them are electric, or they're PTO power. Here you can see where it was originally plumbed for PTO. But man, when they started putting them on an axle, which is the other thing, these were made, just to set somewhere plugged into the wall. But, in the United States, we want portability. So they put one on an axle with a gasoline engine, and it's just been a home run. It's got an oil cooler too, because I mean, it runs pretty quick, and it needs a chance, you know, you got to have a way to cool the oil. And it goes up a 14-foot stacker. And, you know, the one thing we do for our process is there we go. The one thing we do for our process, we only process wood into the trailer, and the wood never touches the ground here. We just think it causes us too much inefficiency, too much bending over. So we use the dump trailer as our as a wheelbarrow. So we just process into the trailer, and then we take the trailer out to the drying yard and we stack the wood out there.
And how long does your wood stay out in the yard, Joe?
So the other thing that we take the time to do, Harry, is we sort by species. So, and you know, and also when we're splitting the wood as small as we're doing, you know, your maple, cherry, ash, they dry out pretty quick. So, you know, you always shoot for 20% moisture content. And then depending on what, you know, how green the logs were when they come in. I mean, we've had wood that's been down to 20% within 3 months. But I think with maple and cherry and ash, I think 4 to 6 months is probably your sweet spot. And that gets me to, you know, one of the things that I've learned to dislike in the firewood industry is oak. I don't like oak firewood. It just takes, you know, that's a 2-year waiting period for it to dry out. I had oak that we split 18 months ago, and they're split small. I split one open, it's still reading 40% moisture inside. You know, and when you're trying to turn over your wood yard, you know, to maintain profitability, man, oak slows you down. Ugh. And I don't like the smell of it either.
Okay, I got a question for you. You haven't mentioned having employees. Are you a one-man show?
I would say that I am, but I do have a core of high school kids, and I pay them to stack. And Harry, probably my biggest bottleneck is stacking, right? But I think it's a necessary element for what we're trying to do right now. I have looked into the bags. I've looked into that posh pack fix, which I think looks pretty cool. But I don't know if it's going to work here because, you know, we got to forklift them around on rough ground, and they could have a blowout or something. So it just seems like every time I've looked into going one way or the other, it just makes better sense to pay a high school kid $20 to stack a cord of firewood. So I have 4 high school kids, 2 girls and 2 boys, and they're both pretty good. And they're good workers, and, you know, they don't smoke cigarettes. And we get them going, and, you know, and they like, here's one of our systems. We call this is a term from the restaurant industry. We call it FIFO, first in, first out. So we started this FIFO down here. So this is my oldest wood, and this is mostly maple beech. And you can see, you know, the older stuff is starting to bleach out. And then coming this way, this is all for one restaurant that we maintain. So this is the greener wood here that we're, you know, going this way. So when we start pulling from this, the trailer gets backed up, and we load the trailer with this cord, and we just, the next week it's this one, next week is this one. And then when we get up a ways to where we can fit in, we start stacking our green stuff here. So then the green is chasing the seasoned wood as we go this way.
Well, that's really good. So what advice can you give other people that's trying to get started?
So I think I'm going to make a couple of assumptions, Harry, that they're just a normal person like me. They don't have a lot of money to play with, and they don't have a lot of resources, you know, like land or labor. Okay, so let's set that, let's start with there. I really think that if you're wanting to make a living with this, and I don't mean a hobby, because a hobby is just, you know, it's just fun to go cut with a saw and sell it, you know, for beer money. If you want to make a living with it, you got to find a market that can sustain value-added firewood. And there are a few of them: restaurants, bundled firewood, and, you know, high-end residential. People that have these big, beautiful houses and these beautiful fireplaces, but they never use them. And, you know, I hear a lot of stories from the phone call coming in. My phone rings all the time for firewood. So I would find a market that could sustain value-added firewood. So value-added firewood takes a little bit more labor. It takes more care, to stack. And, we hand load all of our deliveries, so it looks appealing when we show up. It's not just thrown in. We never dump on the ground. Not just the firewood, but our delivery model, is top notch. And, we're in uniform. We are courteous. Our truck looks good. So I would recommend that you find the way to make the most bang for your buck. So the least amount of firewood for the highest margin. And I think probably, Harry, the best way to start now is probably bundled firewood. Because I think there's a market in bundled firewood where you can live in a condominium and make a living with it. Because you could buy your firewood. You're not running a chainsaw, you're not making your neighbors mad, you're not junking up the property, but you can get yourself a wrapper and you can wrap firewood in your garage and you can make, 400% return on your money for what you can buy firewood from someone that made it, that's just got it for sale out in their front yard. You probably would still want to have to resplit it. So I would, want to get like a fast machine that can resplit. But again, if you can work out a relationship with a supplier of firewood, you can pay them a little bit extra to split it smaller, start your bundles, and you're going. Hit the locally owned grocery stores, convenience stores, gas stations, campgrounds. I think bundled firewood, I think, is the way to go right now.
All right. Well, Joe, the Ohio Woodburner, we greatly appreciate you being with us today. And this is the National Firewood Workshop, and we appreciate your contribution.
Thank you, Harry. It was real nice getting to talk with you. And if you're ever up here in Northeast Ohio, stop on in.
Thank you.